Hi, Paul.
Hello. How you doing, Fab?
I'm good. Yourself.
Good.
All right. So we talked a lot in the past about, prospecting, getting clients in your pipe, or prospects or people in your pipeline, positioning statements, cold calling, all that stuff. A lot of early sales process stuff. And we kind of thought that it would be nice to fast forward things a bit and go to the end of the sales process. I mean, we did have that long episode on sales processes, but it'd be nice to talk about how to close a deal. So I think and the reason I'm asking, and I know there's a lot of stuff in between that needs to happen, but I know with you probably hear a lot about, oh, my salespeople aren't prospecting enough, and you probably hear a lot of stuff about my salespeople aren't closing enough. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk about that latter part, how to close more, and things that you need to take into account when you're trying to close more.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we have to do a little bit of backtracking on closing. Closing's a strange thing, right? If you try to close at the wrong moment, it's rude. If you try to close the wrong person, you're just shooting in the dark. So closing is sort of the moment of truth, right? It's where you realize to your client, did I do a good job?
Mm-hmm.
Are they ready to come on board with us? Is it the right person? And are we going to do business together? But really, if you're only finding this out when you're asking the person for business, you're not really doing your job very well.
Right.
And this discussion we've had in the past, a lot of sales techniques prone the idea of being consultative, which is finding out about your client, which is asking a bunch of questions, which is sitting in their seat. And if that's the case, you should be pretty well aware of what's going on. If you've discussed the capacity to pay, the urgency, whether they're ready to do business with you, how quickly do they need this? Is it a priority? There's a bunch of stuff that and then I firmly believe in a soft close, because if you've sold value, if you've qualified, if you've asked the right questions, if you've presented your company at the right time, closing is easy. But you have to do all those other things first. So closing is almost an indicator of whether you did your sales process properly. That's what it's about.
Right. So it's kind of like, it's almost the conclusion to the story, right? It's not as much a moment in the sales process. I mean, in your CRM it is, but it's more a matter of, like we talked about your problems, we talked about how you would want to fix them. And so clearly at this point, we should work together.
Yeah.
Kind of, right?
Correct. That's it, and if you have to hard close someone, it depends what. I mean, if you're selling, impulse items on the corner of the street, you might be using some harder closing because it's an impulse item, Right. You might be trying to draw the excitement of the moment for the person to just say, hey, yeah, I'll spend $5 on that thing, or $10 on this.
Yeah.
But if you're at all trying to help a client with a process or a procedure or something that is more detailed, you shouldn't be doing some last minute hard close.
So that's interesting, because I'm tying in kind of two things. Obviously we talked a lot about questioning and consultative selling, but one of the last episodes that we recorded, not yet published, was about resistance and lowering resistance. And so obviously I say obviously, but I mean, there's usually there's usually some resistance. No, I'm not saying usually. The end of the process usually brings about some sort of a resistance in pricing and stuff like that, notably.
I'd say negotiation rather than resistance.
Right. So it's kind of a negotiation. So it's not because the closing is soft that you have no negotiation. I mean, is that what you're saying? Is like the closing might be soft, but there's still a negotiation process to go through.
Maybe. It depends. I mean,
right.
If you've really done your job well, you know what the urgency is, you know what they want. You've taken the time to really understand what's going on. You're the plumber that's going to fix the hole in the pipe. You know what I mean? Then there's no question of negotiating. It's like, you got a hole in your pipe, it's leaking, I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
This is, are you willing to pay this rather than, having $1 million in damage in your, beautiful house, or do you want to, or do you want to haggle with me on the price per hour,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not, I personally don't think there are many professional schools of thought on a hard close.
Right.
I when I started out in my career, we used to learn how to close. But if you're closing someone, it's because you don't know what they really need. You're just hoping,
Right.
And,
right. So if you find yourself that you kind of have to do that hard close or use some of the tactics like adding scarcity and stuff like that, like later on, or like, hey, we have a special going on now. Like if you don't sign now, it's too late. It's probably that you've either not followed your sales process or your sales process is not optimized or optimal, I should say.
Yeah. And you still see a lot of that, right? You still see a lot of people trying to say, I'm not sure if there'll be any of this left. But I don't know, does that stuff really still work in today's world? Everyone knows that that's a closing. I'm not sure we'll have some tomorrow, I mean, it works with my 12-year-old son when he's trying to buy something online. I say, and I tell him, buddy, that's just a technique to get you to buy faster, because they'll always be. You might have to wait a week, but, unless you're buying, unless you're a scuba diver and you need tanks of air immediately to survive, you can always wait a little bit. So, I rarely, and maybe this is, some people might disagree with me, and I'd love to hear some comments on this, but I rarely focus on closing, because if you really ask the right questions all the way through, then you should be going. However, there's a soft close, right? And there's objections at the soft close. And I think we've talked about this before. If you know the urgency, the person wants to get this done, and at the end, you're just saying, okay, so, when do you want me to deliver the product, or when do you want us to start with the service? And you're still getting from the client, well, okay, this is great, I love it. I'll get back to you in a couple of weeks, or I have to speak to my boss about it, whatever. Then you need to find out why. You need to find out why. You always want, we've talked about this before, you always want to lower the resistance, of course, do what you want, but you just want to find out why. Like, can you explain to me your decision-making process, or why you need to get back to your boss, or why you need 2 weeks, or why you need 24 hours? I just want to understand. And then there might be some objections in there, right? Well, I find it's too expensive. I want to shop around. You might get deeper into finding out what it is, or the why it is that they need to do this.
Right.
And that's a key thing. Whenever you are given anywhere in the process, whenever you are given any kind of stall to the next step, you need to accept the stall. You can't push someone. You say, hey, we won't have any of these left next week. You got to decide now or go away. Well, then you're risking them saying, okay, see you later. But really, you want to understand what the stall is and why it is they're taking their time.
Right.
Do you call that closing, or do you call that, questioning, finding out more? I don't know.
Right.
The closing, I think it's more a question of finding out in depth what's going on and why the person did this.
Gotcha. And so what does a soft close, sound like in your mind or in your experience?
Well, a soft close sounds like, okay, so you've confirmed with them all the issues they want to settle. You know that there's urgency, or what the start dates should be, and you know that they want to fix it. So it's just a question, okay, when do we start?
Okay. So it'd be kind of like,
I just need your signature to start this thing, That's
so it'd be kind of confirming, okay, so this is kind of the problem that you have. This is how you want to how you were going to go fix it. Like you feel like I'm the person that can help you do that. And if there's yes, then it's like, okay, so when can you start?
Yeah. When I was a kid, I used to go to music stores a lot because I like buying
music.
And it was my introduction to I remember going to this store in Old Montreal. I won't name the name, and it wasn't the big store. But I remember going to this store, and you'd walk in, and the guys were rude, mean, and they just, what do you want? You ready to buy now? It was like, you just walk out as a kid, right? You were kind of browsing, and maybe you would have bought something, but they were hard closing. And I remember once I bought something there because I hated buying there, but they had something I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I went in and the guy was just like, hey, if you're not a buyer, get the hell out of here. He almost said that to me. And it was a hard close. Oh, this is a great, a great piece of gear. You need to have this. This is, da, da, da. It was terrible salesmanship. Like they sold in spite of their attitude, not because of it. Right. And it's that old world sort of push you. Well, if you don't get this, piss off kind of thing. That bit of a New York, 1970s or 60s New York attitude, And it just, a lot of people, when I started in sales in the early 90s, some people were still using those techniques, and they didn't work then. They don't work now. Unless you're preying on a very insecure person, and you get them to buy out of fear, then you're just a peddler.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's some companies that also have some sort of a exclusivity, which makes it a little easier to be, more of a hard pusher or like whatever. Like, I can imagine, let's say you're buying LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I mean, there's not a lot of tools that compare to it, right? So I'm not saying LinkedIn reps are bad. I don't know. I haven't dealt with them in a while, but they kind of have an exclusive product, right? There's not much on the market that can compete against it. I mean, there's other tools that allow you to find data and stuff like that as well. But ultimately, if you want Sales Navigator, you have to go through LinkedIn, and so the rep can act however they want. But that said, I know we're maybe going, but even though that's it, I'm saying, like, even though it's not part of the sales process, but I mean, sometimes being nice and being consultative, even if you have an exclusive product, builds your brand, builds your credibility, right? So it's like it adds authority to, even if you have an exclusive product, it makes it it's like the little parts that make your product even more exclusive, right? Because it's like, if people actually want to interact with your salespeople, it makes them even less likely to say, well, maybe I could get along with, Zoom info that allows me to just find data on whoever and connect with them through that way. So even if you have an exclusive product, it's still a better way. It's still a good idea to do consultative selling. It's still a good idea to do consultative selling.
And let's be honest too, in the last 20 years, you're capable of acquiring a huge amount of data. You can compare a bunch of things. You can't lie to people like some salespeople used to do. You just can't do that. You can't be dishonest. You can't do a hard close like you used to, because people can research. You can buy on Amazon. There's so many other options. You can buy outside of the country, or outside of the province, or outside of the state. So you're out there. You're public. So the close, to me, the close and run attitude doesn't work so well. I'm sure there's some people doing it. But I don't see that as being a valid or a good way of doing business.
Yeah, and I think and I mean, I know that does happen, because you talk to you talk to customer success people or customer service people, and it does still happen, because they're often the ones that have to deal with broken promises and stuff like that. And I think it could be, obviously there's a lot of symptoms, there's a lot of this and that, but it could be a symptom or a sign that there's something wrong with your sales process or sales compensation and whatnot, where if a rep feels that they can lie and it gets them their commission, and then they don't care about it anymore. So that it might be a sign that there's something to review there, and that you can actually be getting more success by reviewing how things are done.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah,
all
cool.
Right.
So, hey, was this good?
It was good. It was good.
Right.
It was good. All right.
Talk to you next week.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone.